And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Riser Report, along with my compartment, my compadres on today. This is our mastermind group. Today is Sunday, October the 19th, 2025 in the Gregorian Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we realign our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIBRadio, LIB Living in Black.com. And let me just welcome into the channel, bring on my guests here for today. First of all, let me get myself on for LIBRadio, and we welcome you all to our listening audience as well. In the house, we have Brother Dwara in the house today. Greetings, Brother Dwara. Hope you are in beautiful spirits.
Oh, absolutely, Baba. Shikamo to you and Ubuntu Ma'a to the global LIB radio family. I'm on day 2 of a 3-day fast.
You are on day 2 of your 3-day fast. Congratulations on that. This is a water-only fast, or what type of a fast are you doing?
Mostly water. But right now I am sipping on some fresh squeezed pineapple and ginger juice. So a little bit of a detox element there. And then I've added a pinch of sea salt and also some magnesium powder.
Okay, all right. So you are adding your electrolytes to it as well, huh?
I'll say, but always open to your wise and esteemed advice as to what is the most appropriate way to go about a 3-day fast.
Well, I'm making a presumption, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that going into the fast, you are in relatively very, very good physical condition. Am I correct?
Yes, I would say so. Humbly.
Okay.
Correct.
And do you know your weight, your body mass index?
Yes, I do. I'm not obese.
Okay. Now, the key is where in the body mass index are you? Because that will give you an indicator of how hard to go in your fast. And
Okay.
so right now I am at a body mass index of, I think, 21.5, which is slightly less than what I had been weighing over the last year or so. I'm actually down below my age 25 weight. And so, therefore, my fast, I had to adjust my fast rather dramatically so that I wouldn't go. I absolutely would not allow myself to go below 140. I did a couple of days during this fast, this 28-day fast I was just on. I did touch 139, or I think one day it was even 138 or so, but then I corrected it immediately. But doing a 3-day water-only fast, or water and electrolyte fast like you're doing, is an excellent strategy. I congratulate you on that, and I hope that you'll be doing this regularly. Do you expect to keep it up?
Oh, absolutely. I've done it regularly over the maybe over the last 6 to 7 years now.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Well, thank you, Baba. I appreciate that, and I have you to thank, really, because you and Baba Dick Gregory, Ancestor Dick Gregory, were really the ones to put me on to fasting. I did some work with his daughter back in the day, Pamela Gregory. What a sweet soul! What a sweet soul she is.
That's right. Dick Gregory had a lot of children. I think he had 10 children or so. And they are wonderfully dispersed all across society, and as touch points for us to remember the profound wisdom that their father shared with us.
I say.
All right. Now we're expecting Baba Jr. to be joining the stream any minute now, and as soon as he does, I'll click him right into the stream. There are a number of critical stories that you and I could be talking about. And here, bear with me, and let me get my coloration right. I've got this green glow around my head today. I forgot. Do not wear yellow and green while going before a green screen. So people will just tolerate my green halo around my head. If I click on the button I normally click on, it removes that halo. my shirt disappears. So I'll be all right. You were saying?
Well, let me tell you this, Baba, that whenever you see in Kemet, whenever you see the paintings on the inside of those vast temple and hospital walls and educational walls and sanctuary walls, you always see Asar painted in green, symbolic of resurrection and new life and the harvest. And so that green halo around you, it fits you well, Baba. That is your crown.
Ashe, Ashe. Thank you. I appreciate love that, no doubt. We do say greetings to our listening audience. Joining us on the Rumble broadcast, we have for Africa One. She is joining us from the UK. She writes Hotep, Mastermind Panel, and Global LIB Family. And we have Nguvu checking in. He says, Sawubona, my brothers. Just wondering, what are your thoughts on possible invasion of Venezuela and the decline of U.S.? Any connections? Oh, I would definitely say there is a connection between this terrorism that Donald Trump's presidency is visiting on the world, and to single out Venezuela and attack Venezuela is nothing short of, from my perspective, just bullying and terrorism. It reminds me of after the United States had been defeated around in Vietnam and in other battles. Ronald Reagan, when he came in, who did he pick to send the U.S. military against? Grenada, a country with virtually no military. And the invasion of Grenada, to me, it was nothing but a bullying tactic. And I say Donald Trump is doing the same thing, picking on Venezuela. But I don't think he's going to be able to pull it off. Your thoughts?
Well, it's very interesting because you mentioned Grenada. You know, Venezuela is really not that far from the Caribbean at all. And the one thing that I kind of wanted to focus and bring this full circle on is and as you know, unfortunately, I wasn't here last weekend, so maybe you guys, maybe you Babas covered it, but have an article. I have several articles talking about the reinstatement of Columbus Day, and I don't think that we can separate that from what is going on in Venezuela. And like I mentioned, you mentioned Grenada, and so yes, this is nothing but. In my personal opinion, the CIA wanting to get more control of the narco trafficking and the drug trade, which they have always illicitly been involved in. And also, we cannot forget the Venezuelan natural resources that Venezuela has. And so whether this is pulled off or not remains yet to be seen. But it is very interesting, and as Baba Junius always reminds us, their playbook is very thin.
Their playbook is very thin. Yeah. Now, Baba Junius won't be with us today, so it'll be you and I. You will be filling in his big shoes as he was filling in your big shoes last week. So great to have you with us this week. Let me say greetings again. Osale Kamal is in the house. Greetings, Mastermind Panel. He's joining us as well. And we're hoping everybody out there listening, hit the like button. That lets the algorithm know that you do like what you're hearing. And we're also broadcasting on our Rumble. We're broadcasting on YouTube. We are on YouNow, as well as on Facebook Live as well. This idea of attacking Venezuela and the decline of the U.S., I think if they do launch the attack, it will significantly take the U.S. out of competition for world strategy. China is right now standing as the greatest rival to the United States, almost at exact economic parity if you consider purchasing power parity, which you can buy with the Chinese yuan as opposed to buy with the U.S. dollar. The Chinese have surpassed the U.S. economy. But in absolute valuation, they will surpass the United States probably any minute now. And China does not engage in any wars, no wars. Now, they are preparing the act to put Taiwan back under the same flag. And that's To me, that's their business. But here's the thing. If the U.S. goes into Venezuela, I doubt there will be a ground invasion. I think they will stand off the coast of Venezuela and do the best they can to sink anything coming off of Venezuela, whether they be alleged smuggling boats or whether they be small ships coming off of Venezuela. Point two, there will be no ground invasion. The U.S. cannot afford a ground invasion because in a ground invasion, you have to have an overwhelming number of troops to go in. Otherwise, your troops just go in. And remember, Venezuela is a equatorial nation with a lot of rainforests, etc. So an asymmetrical engagement with Venezuela would provoke a guerrilla warfare, which United States couldn't do a guerrilla warfare against Afghanistan. They didn't even have no trees.
Right, right.
So I think it'll be asymmetrical. I think that Venezuelans will probably not even try to defeat the United States. They'll just try and tie them up in stagnation. And that won't last but for so long because people remember Iraq, Afghanistan, and they can never forget Vietnam. You were about to say.
So I have an article from, let's see here. It's from Zero Hedge. It's a very good article on the CIA's narco trafficking history. The title of the article is "The Irony of Trump's New quote unquote war on drugs, recalling the history of CIA narco trafficking." Very interesting piece. And just really kind of goes into what's going on now and how military intervention has so far killed 27 people, including individuals, Baba Kitty, that were not even Venezuelan. For example, Colombia has claimed one of the boats that was hit by one of the strikes. And then also 2 citizens from Trinidad and Tobago have also been among the deceased as well. So in international waters, this is a very interesting thing. Like you said, off the coast of or in the shoreline of Venezuela, obviously not a righteous thing at all. But we're seeing a lot of this happen in international waters, which is even more bold and just disturbing, in my personal opinion.
I'm curious. Have we heard anything come officially out of CARICOM responding to the U.S. new assault?
Not that I've seen. Not that I have seen.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. I'm not going to look that up right now. But the CARICOM nations, there are 17 nations of Caribbean community. There are also, of course, the South American. There's a whole CELAC, which covers CARICOM Central and South American. And I can't remember how many nations are in that group, but it's a large amount of nations. They're going to have some sort of response because, in essence, King Donald Trump, is attempting to impose the Monroe Doctrine over South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And from my understanding, when the Monroe Doctrine never was officially withdrawn, but in recent years, they had kind of backed away from that aggressiveness. And now you have China and other countries around the world stepping into South America, Central America as region as well. This is a big mess.
Yes, yes.
A big mess. And I left the adjective out of mess, but it's a big mess.
I can't argue with that at all. And when we look deeper at this fascinating article, it talks about starting in 1947 to 1951, the CIA was involved with drug smuggling in France, and then the early 1950s all throughout Southeast Asia, and then from the 1950s to the early 1970s in Indochina. And then from 1973 to 1980, you have Australia. This very interesting bank. It was a CIA bank called the Nugent Hand Bank of Sydney. And the bank basically financed drug trafficking, money laundering, and international arms dealing. And in 1980, amidst several mysterious deaths, the bank collapsed, $50 million in debt. And then wrapping up the last two from 1970s to the 1980s, Panama, of course, with Manuel Noriega, a highly paid CIA asset and collaborator. And then in the 1980s with Central America. And this is also connected to the importation of cheap cocaine for the manufacture of it being turned into crack cocaine with Ricky Ross and the Iran Contra scandal with that devil Ollie North and his cabal.
Yeah, it goes on and on. The record shows that the CIA, they're not a nice organization, Brother Dwar.
No. Drug trafficking, pedophilia, human trafficking, child sex trafficking, and a lot of it, from what I've read, is all done off the books. I remember, and this was partly due to your research as well, the CIA, the covert CIA operations in Jamaica during the Manley era, and how these CIA agents were allowed to get away with anything and everything. They were completely unchecked. And one article mentioned that several intel reports came in that some agents had gone completely rogue, sleeping with children and all kinds of devilish insanity. So I agree with you. And then we can also go to the mid 80s and the 90s in IET, and then the 1980s to the early 1990s in Afghanistan. And it still continues to this day. So is Venezuela just yet another extension of this sinister history?
This demonic history is absolutely demonic. I do agree with you completely. And we're going to hopefully be able to survive it all. We have to remember that what the CIA does is what the U.S. Defense Security Department does, is what America does. And when it comes down to it, Africans in America, unless they're on an open rebellion status or an unending rebellious status, are going to be affiliated, associated with the U.S. government. There has been a debate. I don't know whether you've got a chance to check out this debate. Have you been following the conversations? And I'm not going to go deep into it today, but that have involved Burkina Faso, the ADDI organization, Dr. Arikana Chimboro, and African Americans. Have you been monitoring that in the last 2 weeks or so? It's gotten a little ugly.
Unfortunately, I have not, but you definitely got my ears, because that is something that I think should be paid attention to by our people.
Yeah, there have been two individuals, and these two individuals, I'll be honest with, I'm not necessarily down with them. One calls himself and his program Go Black to Africa, and the other one is called, I think it's Kinganda. And the two individuals, and I don't have their names handy, but the two individuals originally talked about Burkina Faso. There was a trip that the ADDI organization was planning to go to Burkina Faso. And then there had been promises that we would get citizenship. We're being offering citizenship. I mean, the number of different offers, they became absurd at some point. They were saying they were going to give us land, free housing, let us build our own American city over there. 95% of everything that was being talked about on YouTube was false narrative, just as 95% of the videos surrounding Ibrahim Traore are actually fake videos, artificial videos, videos of him speaking in English. He does not speak English. He may speak English on his own, but he does not do it formally at all.
Hmm.
and a number of other things. But this particular series of articles ended up that Ken Ganda and Go Black to Africa both began condemning Dr. Arikana Chimbodo and the ADDI organization. Now, apparently, there has been a rift between Africans in America and Burkina Faso that seems to be widening, and it could very well likely be due to propaganda efforts on the
Yeah.
part of the CIA. Your thoughts?
Oh, I think I think that's obviously very, very clear when one reads books like the COINTELPRO papers, and Agents of Repression. Also, the CIA's documented history on the continent of Africa. I know there's several books that you own, that you've recommended, that I've also purchased. I think whenever we see these schisms created, it goes back to what I mentioned a couple weeks ago, which is the CIA and military strategy of, it's called the stratagem of tension, and essentially
Mm-hmm.
that's a fancy word for divide and conquer. And so
Mm-hmm.
whenever these things come about, these divisions, and people lauding, uh, you know, it's very you see a lot of people bad jacketing each other, and that is a very clear indication that yes, something or someone, an agent provocateur, a comprador, is in the middle trying to dump gasoline on the fire that is sparking between two groups that would otherwise have the same mission. So there should
Mm-hmm.
be no deviation, in my opinion. That is definitely a huge red flag. Yes.
Now, here's a question I have of you.
Mhm.
Can Africans in America engage in affairs, Pan African affairs? Can we, I'm going to include myself in this, can we really be trusted to engage in Pan African affairs with a clear conscience and a clear heart? I'm not saying all of us, but I am saying 90 to 95% of us have been infected with that germ called
Yes.
the Stockholm syndrome.
We it's a tough question, Baba. It's a tough question. I mentioned several weeks ago about going to this farmers market in a large metropolitan neighborhood, and what I saw there amongst our people, my answer would be no, no. We are the opposite of Pan Africanism, um, in that sense. Now, if I was to include yourself, Baba Junius, myself, Dr. Ericana Chiambori Kwao, PLO Lumumba, uh, other notable people like Obadale Kamban, then yes. But as I've tried to politely say throughout the years, it's not going to be the masses of us that repatriate. It's not going to be the masses of us that start Kuji Chagalia villages. It's not going to be the masses of us who are able to be formidable players in the game, the game theory, right? Of being able to rebuild bridges back to the continent. It's just
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately the mind, like you said, has been infected. We are sick because we are consuming things that were never meant for us to consume.
Mm, yeah. And as I estimate, it's only maybe 5% of us that would even qualify to even be considered to be Pan African with no compromise. And then there is the smaller, much smaller percentage of that percentage, which are secretly pretending to be Pan Africans.
Right,
And
right.
I'm not going to mention any names, but
Mhm.
I suspect that no small number of these pretend Pan-Africans have gone to the continent and are putting out YouTube videos,
I
including talking about the rift.
Yeah, yes, I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Whenever someone is talking about the work instead of doing the work, I'm suspicious. Now,
Mm,
I'm not gonna say any names either, but I think as a rule of thumb, one has to pay less attention to the words and more attention to the actions. And then the other issue that I take with people claiming Pan-Africanism, and I don't want to be too hard on our people, yet there's a difference between hanging a red, black, and green flag in your bedroom and doing the necessary character cleansing transformational work to live not only according to an African consciousness and an African worldview, but also I've been thinking a lot about this triune trinity, this trinity of thoughts, words, and actions. So hanging a Pan-African flag up does not mean that you have Pan-African thoughts, does not mean those thoughts become Pan-African words, and does not mean that those Pan-African words become Pan-African actions. That's what we need to focus on. It's not we're too stuck in the superficial. We think as long as we look good, smell good, and sound good, then we must be okay. It's got to go deeper than that.
yeah, got to go much, much deeper than that. I do agree. We welcome your comments today. Do join us. Let us know what you're thinking about. We see on YouTube, Deja Vu is in the house. We welcome Deja Vu to the conversation today, and greetings to everybody. You have found your family in a peaceful place. Um, I've made some notes for issues that we could discover today. If you don't mind, I'll
Yeah,
go
same here.
into a couple of these notes here. Yesterday, in the United States, in all 50 states, over 2,700 marches took place under the banner of No King's Day. No Kings, meaning, of course, Donald Trump has become authoritarian and he is acting like a king, and people standing up to say No King's Day. Your thoughts on No King's Day?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna try not to be too harsh.
Okay, I see where you're going. Go ahead, go there. Where you want to go?
I appreciate that, Baba. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really kind of at I'm holding on to my patience with people that think of Donald Trump as the only, listen to me very carefully when I say the only devil, or the only tyrant, or the only neo-colonizer, or the only oppressor. I put him and Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Obama, Kamala Harris, Susan Rice, Colin Powell. Uh, I put them all in the same category. I don't see them as any difference. I remember back in the day, you used to say that they were two wings of the same bird.
Mm-hmm.
There was another way that I think it was described too, that choosing between Democrat and Republican was like choosing between syphilis and gonorrhea.
Oh,
It,
good God Almighty.
it They're both bad. You don't want either of them, and they all come from this same pool of elites. You know, I think there's only been one president in the history of the United States that was not a millionaire
Mm.
before coming into office, even if the president was a millionaire due to his wife's money or whatnot, which is the
Mm-hmm.
case with Barack Obama and several others, right? But for me, No Kings is it's evidence of the decline. It's evidence of the myopic, kind of very limited, short-sighted, blindfolded view that many people have in thinking that this 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 emperor with no clothing, Donald Trump. There was another word, the silvery tangerine, someone called him recently. I kind of like that. The silvery tangerine, the emperor with no clothes. He's not the only problem. He's got advisors. He's got people that will replace him. He's got people that are going to replace him. So why do we get stuck on the image? Again, it goes back to the superficiality. We are rocked to sleep into thinking that this is our only problem. Meanwhile, abortion. Meanwhile, iatrogenics. Meanwhile, we are consuming poison, be it culturally, spiritually, mentally, dietarily,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not having any protests against that. And then lastly, I'll say I think we need a no King's Day amongst our own people as well, because I also see fault with this kind of glorification of all of us as kings and queens. I disagree. Not everyone
Mm-hmm.
is meant to be a king. And the hardest to conquer and the hardest to invade and the hardest to capture were those like the Igbo who had no kings and queens.
Mm. That's right. And you're making very, very good points. Another analogy, I would say the Democrats and the Republicans are
Mhm.
like two cheeks of the same butt.
And nothing but
And what comes out of the middle of them?
there you go. Yeah.
So
Nasty.
we could turn the rest of the program into analogies of they are two of the same whatever. Yeah, let's
Right.
ask our listening audience. Top that one.
Right.
But yeah, I do agree. And you're making good points. So, no King's Day March. My thought of it,
Yes.
they looked very good on the liberal media.
Mm.
They look good on MSNBC and all of their affiliates, et cetera, et cetera. But no King's Day, in actuality, to me, will only continue to provoke the reactionary right wingers, and they're looking at those no King's Day protests with everybody holding hands and singing Kumbaya and the rainbow flag waving over all of. They look at all of that, and I personally think it makes their stomach churn as well, and they realize that they have the guns. Maybe they have the guns. Maybe they don't have the guns. Maybe we might be overlooking the fact that the military was really, really offended at that meeting that Hegsbeth or whatever the guy's name is and Donald Trump had,
Right.
where they called them in from all over the world to a meeting where they sat and got dressed down and say, "You're fat, you're lazy, women amongst you do not deserve to be there, the blacks amongst you are questionable, etc." Maybe the military got really offended, and they're just kind of keeping a lid on it right now. We did see a number of retired military come out and speak very openly. They oppose that. And so, of course, the people in the military are not allowed to say anything political. Otherwise, they could be court-martialed or otherwise sanctioned somehow. So this is going to be interesting. There is an ancient Chinese curse. You've heard me talk about it many times. May you live in interesting times.
Mm. And if I could pair that humbly with a Yoruba proverb that says, "Never have our elders worshipped an Orisha of this kind."
Wow. That is profound. For Africa One is talking to us in the chat. She writes, people have been programmed to believe in the cult of personality rather than the understanding this is a system. Very profound thought. Very, very profound thought. Yeah. Going on, I have a couple of other news stories, and anyone can introduce a news story anytime. We'd love to hear from you. This next news story, the British Museum has over 73,000 stolen African artifacts. The British Museum alone holds over 73,000, while the University of Cambridge's collections contain approximately 350,000, mostly stolen African artifacts and manuscripts, including items housed across their museums, libraries, and botanical gardens. The vast majority of these collections were acquired during British colonization, with methods ranging from purchase and gifting to outright looting and theft. Over 73,000 or as many as 350,000 stolen items, artifacts. You have a thought on that, brother?
Oh, wow. Well, one, it doesn't surprise me. I'd love to know the estimated value of all of that priceless African art, because as we know, some of the most wealthiest galleries in the world are for African art. Japan actually has a huge African art industry in which they deal exclusively with African art, and obviously Europe, no big surprise there, does as well. To think of the priceless amounts of African artifacts that they have, even just laying in their basements, that have never seen the light of day. It is evidence of plunder. It is evidence of robbery. It is evidence of rape, cultural rape. And as I read a couple of years ago, I found this very interesting. One of the proposed pushes for Christianity in the continent of Africa, on the continent of Africa, is to persuade these rural, traditional nations to give, and villages, to give up their priceless artifacts because they are demonic, they are evil. And then in turn, the European missionaries say that they're going to burn them and get rid of them and all that. But then they get these huge shipping containers or these barrels, and they send all of it back to Europe. And there's a very, very lucrative market for that art. And from what I understood from the article, many, many, many villages were giving away their ancestral artifacts. This is something that that is in complete violation with our ancestral taboos and abominations. We cannot give up our own traditions and culture for this newness, this Johnny-come-lately baby religion called Christianity. We are being okey-doked in that sense. And from what I understood, the article basically was saying that that's how a lot of this art is acquired for free and then sent straight to Europe, America, Japan.
Recently, I came across that article as well, or that information as well, and it is horribly, horribly tragic. That's all I can say. It's just a terrible tragedy. And on this side of the water, amongst our Christian family, we have to call them brothers and sisters because they are family, to give up on the African cultural legacy, even the clothes. I mean, the more adventurous or risque or whatever Christians will wear kente cloth now, but to give up on our African style of dress, to give up on our customs and traditions in favor of this, dare I say, bastardized collection of illegitimacy in spirituality that we've gotten as a legacy of being whipped, tortured, maimed, held under unbearable conditions until we accepted their names and their religion and everything else that goes. It's just a tragedy that we may never, we as Afro-Americans, may never, ever be able to recover from.
Fade to black. Fade
The
to black.
last of that legacy would be the Gullah. And how many of us are standing up to support the Gullah? Because right now the Gullah are being challenged down to the very last stretch.
And, you know, respectfully, I want to say that that's also because there were a lot of families who moved to the north, moved to New York City, moved to Philly, that sold their land off and are
Hmm.
regretting it. Are regretting it. Um,
They will
you know,
never get that land back
no,
unless there's
now
a revolution of sorts.
exactly, and a lot of that is being turned into multi-million dollar real estate resorts, as we know. A lot of the islands are just completely being obliterated as a result, and they're turned into these white utopian paradises for yeah. It reminds me of the flooding of of the flooding of Nubia when the Aswan Dam was created, and how it was just
Yeah.
all laid to waste and the people were displaced. But we do have to hold accountability and responsibility. There were a lot of families who moved north, moved to New York City especially, and sold off grandma and grandpa's land.
And it's still ongoing. They're still selling off grandma and grandpa's land. That land that, according to the way American real estate has been going, will never be recovered by those families again. The land ultimately will end up in the corporate holdings as well. The corporations want it all.
Yeah.
They want it all. They want, there's no satisfying this system of greedy corporations.
Yeah, individuals as well. They seem to want it all. You know, it's in the Uruguayan nature to just have this gluttony, this insatiable greed. They're gourmandizers. That's one of my favorite words. They're just absolute gourmandizers. They just stuff themselves until they're near dead.
And then they go out, purge, throw up, and then they come back again a second time. There is no satisfying the incomplete being, which
Mm.
is what Urugu stands for, the incomplete being.
I see.
Going on, unless you
Right.
want to add to that, we
Well,
another
we got to.
story that go ahead, you got it. You got the
Oh, I'm
floor.
sorry. I just wanted to say that we have to remain hopeful. So, we're taking it one stride at a time. But I hear you. I'm breathing heavy over here myself. It does get infuriating. But
Hmm.
we use our culture to bolster us to keep moving forward.
That's right. That's right. Ashe, yo. Another story I have pulled up, and anything you want to put on the table, just go ahead and speak up, Duara.
Okay, absolutely. I have
In
several things as well. Sure.
Yeah, in Kenya, Raila
Mhm.
Odinga
Mm.
dies on October 15th. Raila Odinga was the perpetual presidential candidate. He ran for and lost the presidency, ran for it 5 times, and he died just recently. At his funeral, because Kenya is still very largely divided nations along ethnic lines. The Kikuyu, the Luo, the Kamba, and
Mhm.
a number of other different groups. They've got 39 or so different ethnic groups. But the Luo have always been one of the largest and have always been rivals of the Kikuyu.
Mm.
So Raila Odinga dies in Kenya October 15th at his public viewing at the Kasarani Stadium.
Mhm.
Chaos ensued as the underlying tensions between the Luo and Kikuyu came to the surface during this public viewing. Chaos ensued, and the police security forces ended up shooting 3 of the attendees to death.
Unbelievable. Mm.
So I love Kenya. I really, really do love Kenya. I send remittances to Kenyans. I keep in contact with Kenyans. I get
Mhm.
calls from and give calls to Kenyans nearly every day of the week. I plan on retiring in Kenya and
I
living
see.
my life out there.
I see.
But Kenyans are making these big mistakes. When William Ruto came into the Kenyan presidency, not
Mhm.
just me, but a whole bunch of people had high hopes that William Ruto was going to put Kenya on a solid middle class nation status, that he would raise the income of the Kenyans up and have other policies that would everyone would embrace. And he came to Washington, D.C. I think it was 2022, or no, it was before 2022. He met with Joe Biden in the United States
Mhm.
and went back home and turned into an absolute demon.
Mm. Mm. There's a very interesting program. You've heard of Lyndon Googie? She has a popular YouTube channel, Kenyan YouTube channel.
I don't
Um,
recognize the name.
sure, I'll see if I can find it in the background. I believe I can't remember the guest's name off the top of my head, but he talked about the extent to which the U.S., specifically the White House and the president, goes to seducing African leaders, literally wooing them, swooning them, choosing even strategically what foods to offer them in order to present this propagandic image of why they should be in alignment with the US. And this brother just laid it out so eloquently and really gave a deep behind the scenes look as to how much the US, how much detail the US goes to seducing these African leaders so that they're put in positions of compromise and seduction. And I think that is exactly what happened to President Ruto, like you said, when he came to visit the US. He was seduced.
Mm-hmm.
And I
And
can try to look up that video in the background if you want me to.
yeah, definitely look the video up. I'd love to share it with our listening audience. And the the chaos around Raila Odinga's uh, homegoing reminds us ultimately that Africa's borders are artificial. The
Mm-hmm.
borders were drawn at the Berlin Conference. The British drew African borders along with the French, and there were uh, seven nations who carved up Africa: Germany, Italy, France, UK, Belgium was in the house, and a couple of others. Spain got Equatorial Guinea, and Portugal. They carved it up. Of course, also in attendance were Russians and Americans. They
Mm-hmm.
carved it up, and they definitely deliberately drew the borders to create these permanent rivalries, and their policies in governing those nations, especially the British, were masters at divide and conquer while still keeping the people within their grasp. And
Right.
so Africa's borders are going to have to be dropped. I was listening to someone, it was a Chinese political analyst. I was listening to him very recently,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about what China did to eradicate poverty really since about 1980. China eradicated its poverty and now is on challenge to be the wealthiest, most prosperous nation in the world.
Mm.
But it wasn't until 1980 that China finally came up with this particular plan and implemented that plan. And he said that Africa could rival or supersede China. Africa
Right.
is significantly larger than China. Africa has all of the natural resources. In fact, if Africa were not divided, it would be the largest nation
Yes.
on the planet. But that Africa is divided, and it keeps these little tiny countries constantly bickering within themselves and rivalry against each other. And he said if Africa could drop the borders and function as one nation, it would undeniably be within a century the most powerful nation on earth in history.
I don't disagree with that for 1 second. And as a matter of fact, I have a book on Uganda, and it literally is about decolonizing the land in such a way that there is an erasure, like you mentioned, of borders, which is what the natural flow was between these differing nations and these neighboring ethnic groups. Is there was a flux and a flow. That's not to say there wasn't ever war, but if I may read something from a very profound book on the African understanding of war, especially coming from an Oromo perspective in Ethiopia. This book is called Oromo Wisdom in Black Africa by Deribi Demisi Boku. And on the subject of war, very profound, he says, war is the ugliest and most barbaric type of solution to differences. That's a very profound statement. War is the ugliest and barbaric type of solution to differences. Those of the Oromo believe that differences arising between nations, communities, and individuals should be resolved peacefully through mediation. They also advise society members that human beings shouldn't kill one another. If by accident war erupts, they strongly recommend that it should end through discussion and reconciliation. That's Ubuntu. That's Ubuntu.
And these are the Oromo people.
These are the Oromo people. And from what I've read, this mirrors all the other major African nations and ethnicities that I have had the privilege to read about. And then he goes on to say that, you know, basically that those who settle differences peacefully are respected because they are considered wise. Now, what does that say? What does that say about these people from this barren rock of Europe? They must be the most unwise people because all they seem to perpetuate is war. The opposite of that, again, the African understanding being that those that are able to be peacemakers, those that are able to reconcile differences through Ma'at, through Ubuntu, they are known as wise people, because why would anyone think that shedding the blood of another human being was somehow some act of valor? It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And I did find that video and I put that up in the private chat.
I see it right now.
Very, very interesting interview.
Yeah. The ideas of war being uncivilized, barbaric, and of the lowest order, it is, of course, coming from a spirituality and from an African spirituality that is so much higher than what the European imposed order, global order, is even able to comprehend. It may be another century yet. This may be the last century that the European violence and barbarity and colonialism and their ideas of greed and nature and theft and everything, this may be the last century of its existing on the planet, because the alternative might be they'll just nuke everything if they can't have everything they want.
Like babies that have not learned how to share.
The incomplete being, Urugu. Whew, we're getting heavy today. Let me.
Yeah.
Oh,
the self-aborted one. I'm sorry. I was just going to say the other one I learned recently, besides the incomplete being, is that Urugu also was the self-aborted one. And using that analogy, they may just take themselves out. You know, live by the sword, die by the sword. Or I like to highlight the Yoruba version of karma, which is ashes fly back in the face of those who throw them.
Wow. Yeah, very profound. Let me go into the chat and see who's talking to us. Deja vu. If this much energy was put in housing and caring for our veterans, for U.S. veterans, a large population of homeless and mental illness is our U.S. veterans. But as we as a country are more concerned about illegal immigrants, and Deja vu is absolutely right. All of this concern about getting rid of illegal immigrants, yet in almost every one of American cities, you have a vast homeless network of people living there. It's particularly bad on the West Coast, California, where, of course, you can at least live through the winter. But New York and D.C. and the other East Coast cities, they have their homeless camps as well.
That's true. And from what I understand, it's quite a sight, and it's growing. It's only getting worse.
Yeah, it's only getting worse. So, if anybody has more good news you want to share with us, we will welcome that good news. I have another story up, and this story is not good news. And it talks about what is it about this creature, this son and daughter of the incomplete being, this creature. Del Jones made a statement. I don't like the language, but Del Jones said, and I quote, "America is a nigger factory."
Mm.
So, what is the role of unconscious consumerism in this role of creating this quote unquote N-word factory that Del Jones talked about?
Well,
Unconscious consumerism.
yeah, that's just it. Well, for me, one of the underlying changes that has created that factory is changing the minds of our people from communalism and Ubuntu to rugged individualism, hyper selfishness, me, instead of we, and that is a byproduct of this consumerism, or should I maybe the reverse is actually more accurate, that consumerism is a result of this attitude, this adoption of this rugged individualism, that as long as I can consume, I can be silenced and therefore not produce anything, because that's just it, Baba, is that you are either consuming or you are producing. And too many of us have been brainwashed by this victim mentality, in that we think that just consuming and sitting around and waiting for a handout and waiting for the Messiah and self-medicating ourselves by just drinking or smoking and eating ourselves to death, that is somehow a beautiful life, a good life. Maybe even is that the real American dream?
I think you hit it right on the head with that last statement. It is the real American dream. And for those Africans in America who have ambitions to be accepted as a full American,
Yes.
that is maybe one of their easiest, more easily achievable goals, is to get more credit so you can buy more things that will impress your small group of people that you want to impress, so that they will ultimately accept you into their circle. It's a never ending, it's like a dog chasing its tail. It will never ever end, and you will never ever catch up with the one in front of you,
Exactly.
because they can just write their own ticket. They cancel out their credit cards when the credit card load gets too debt, and they put them on you and I somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then, you get a phone call from one of our crazy cousins who needs to borrow money, to support to support whatever habit I mean, I just wrote this down. The real American dream is to stay high, to endlessly consume, and to fully be embraced by our captors.
That's it. Woo! That is it. And of course, now for younger generations, the new real American dream is to become a social media influencer,
Exactly. A celebrity.
a celebrity. We're going forward. A couple of comments have come in I'd like to share with you. We have Africa 4. Africa 1 is in the house. She writes, unlike China, Africa has to contend with African allegiance to Islam and Christianity rather than Ubuntu. And that's a very profound statement. Islam and Christianity, we had mentioned earlier, and has done a real number on the African mind, the mindset. That's the theft of one's spirituality is really kind of the theft of everything, and replacing it with unconscious consumerism or the desire for unconscious consumerism is a never-ending trap.
I say, yeah, it's a hole that one cannot easily crawl out of. There was a documentary back in the day. I think it was just called Happy. It's just called Happy, and it was about the psychology of happiness. It actually reminded me. And by the way, I wanted to big you up, Baba, and say that your Blue Zones program that you did recently, that was one of the best programs I had heard in a while, and that invigorated me. That inspired me. This is the importance of LIBRadio. If I can just quickly pitch LIBRadio and say that what I have always loved over about the last 20 years is that whenever I am feeling down or feeling like fade to black is encroaching even on my own family or my own community, I go to LIB, I listen to one of your many vast and wonderful programs, and I get inspired by this new information that maybe I hadn't heard of in a while, or maybe in the case of Blue Zones, there were some updates that got revealed. And I'm aglow again, shining, ready to share this information with other people. I think we all have to be local village messengers of not just scary news, which is a part of what we deal with here on the Mastermind, but also of the empowering news of the things that we can control and that we can implement and practice into our lives. Because, Baba, I think you'd agree, there's no better feeling than to be creative and to be productive and to produce, but also to implement things in your life that are going to make your life better, healthier, more substantial. That is the real empowerment that we need. So I wanted to big you up for that program specifically. I've been listening to that almost every day for the past 3 days.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Well, I received that. When I did the program, I got very excited in the same way that you are feeling right now. And it seems in many ways, you and I are synchronistic. We are so much on the same pathway that when I produce a show like that, it's going to vibrate and reverberate with you as well. So I thank you for being tuned in and for listening with the ear that I am attempting to cultivate amongst our vast audience, and to expand that audience much, much more as well.
Absolutely. No, I thank you. And I apologize. I deviated from the original question, which I now have lost.
Which I can't remember either. So
Right.
we'll be back around this in due time. And I wanted to just share a couple of comments have come in. Oh, we're talking about unconscious consumerism. Snotball, I think King Jason, upon hearing that, he said, I thought it was Neely Fuller that said that LOL. I don't know what he's referring to. Please remind us what that statement is referring to. He said, the American, quote, stuffist, a collector of stuff at all costs. And even if it is a cost of our sanity, our long-term wealth empowerment, it's been said it will take, at the current rate, it will take Africans in America 228 years to catch up with the whites if their income per household freezes and ours continues to increase. Well, with the way we're consuming, I say we will never catch up, because we're doing it in debt. Debt itself is more self-perpetuating than what people give credit for. King Jason also writes, the crazy thing is, though, true Christianity is a real Ubuntu promoting practice. America has just been successful at replacing God with money. That's an interesting statement. I want to have your thoughts too.
I can't.
Your thoughts first.
So
Mm-hmm.
I cannot argue with that. I have been to Ethiopia as you have, Baba.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen the second or third holiest site in all of Christianity, which is Lalibela,
Mm-hmm.
with those magnificent rock-hewn churches. And what I experienced in Ethiopia was exactly that, was a Christian Ubuntu,
Mm-hmm.
of a traditional or an indigenous sense. And so I can't argue with that at all. Um, and then the other thought that I had was that that's just it. Is it all comes back to culture. And
Mm-hmm.
I have another article here to tie this in. Senate passes a nearly $1 trillion defense bill.
Mm.
That shows you what the mindset of this culture deems a priority. Whereas in Ethiopia, the Kismet festival, the Christmas Day celebration, to see tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Christians coming together in the spirit of Ubuntu, in the spirit of Ma'at. That's a beautiful thing. And that is a part of their culture, and that is a cultural priority amongst them. So I can't argue with that statement at all.
Yeah, while in Ethiopia, I had the wonderful fortune to have attended the Festival of Saint Mary, which was it began at 4:30 in the morning. Thousands of people, many thousands of people came out, everyone dressed in white, and we all got a beeswax candle. We lit the candle and then followed the procession of the a replica of the Ark of the Covenant being carried around the city of Aksum there in Ethiopia. And it was such a precious cultural moment that words cannot describe. It was a unifying moment. It was complete, total peace, as opposed to in Kenya, they can't even get together to mourn a person's homecoming without violence. It was so beautiful there. And the Ethiopians are not a rich people monetarily. They don't have their bank accounts are not loaded with beer, which is their currency, as
Mhm.
we have. But they're such a rich people culturally that money is deprioritized as a value within that society. And what is prioritized is this form of Christianity, which, in my opinion, and I guess you will share that opinion also, carries forward the culture necessary to make them a peaceful, benevolent, generous people. And they have the best food in the
Uh,
world. And don't even talk to me about the sight of Ethiopian women and men as very, very handsome, beautiful people with very low rates of obesity in the country.
Very clear-eyed people. I'm gonna skip talking about the food because I'm on day 2 and I haven't gotten past that I haven't gotten past that hunger hurdle yet. But my goodness, well, okay, let me just dive into it. The best honey, and it's called kita and mar, and that's bread and honey. I mean, if anything, it was healing. It was healing, and the bread was unleavened. It was not this unhealthy bread. It was whole grain. It was made from scratch. It was like a lightly baked injera even. But with that being said, the other thought that comes to mind is that also why there is such an attack on Africa, because they know that we devalue material possessions and prioritize family, community, village, and that is exactly in opposition to their rugged individualism and hyper consumerism, where everyone gets picked off and strangleholded by economic debt, which you can't do if you have other people in your family advising you. That is one of the main things I always point out, is that Their playbook, again, as Baba Junius always mentions, is very thin. And at the top of that list is to separate the children from the parents and the community elders such that they can be influenced, brainwashed, socially engineered towards consumerism, consumptionism. Some call it affluenza, and
Mm,
and away from these communal values where an experience with another human being is seen as more wealthy than what you have in your bank account.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So very, very true. Couple more comments. For Africa One, can you post YouTube program mentioned on Kenya, mentioned by Brother Duwara, please? And I'll post that up right again. Um, and there it is, and it's up on YouTube. And please, everybody, if you can, don't leave us and go to YouTube and start surfing and watch that
Wait till the
video.
program's over, right?
Wait till the program's over. Just save the link, and then when the program's over, you can do your YouTube surfing. We appreciate love that. Going forward, here 1 second.
Mhm.
Let me take this out of the private. Let me take this out of the chat here. Oh, hide that. And one more story, and I'm going to have to leave maybe at the bottom of the hour, a little bit earlier, because I do have to cook for at least one client is coming by today.
Oh
Um,
shit.
talking about Trump.
Mm.
We did at the beginning of the program open up the dialogue with No King's Day.
Yes.
And this is another story. It read in part in a follow up. Last week, Trump held an Antifa roundtable, unquote unquote, Antifa roundtable at the White House to brainstorm for Fox News cameras about how Trump could use armed forces to, quote, bring Antifa down, unquote. President Donald Trump formally designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization through an executive order signed on September 21st, 2025, citing it as a militarist, as a, quote, militarist anarchist enterprise, unquote, posing a threat to U.S. national security. The directive mandated federal agencies, including the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle Antifa operations and pursue those pursuing material support to its alleged activities. It's a lot. But this man is acting like a king and signing these presidential executive orders like decrees.
Mhm.
What do you think about Antifa? Have you, in your radical experiences, have you ever run across anybody claiming to be Antifa or that organization?
That's a great question. I can't say that I have. I have never met anyone who has ever identified themselves as Antifa. Now, I'm not saying they don't exist, but I have never come across someone of that ilk, or at least, you know, I don't know how public they are about, you know, that type of information. But there's another term too, which is transtifa, um,
Mm.
which may be which may be the more accurate term. Um, Now, I heard some quibblings about it's unlawful. You know, the president cannot deem a domestic organization or movement or whatever as a terrorist organization. But recently, I saw that there were claims that Antifa was actually an international organization, and I think they used that as a justification to kind of push this terrorism classification onto them. Uh, Bob Marley said it best. You have a better voice than I do, Baba. But everywhere is war.
Everywhere is war. Yeah, he made a profound statement there. And of course, that was from the Haile Selassie speech that was given before the League of Nations. Bob Marley turned that into a song. Now, let me ask you this question. Have you ever met anyone who was pro fascist?
Oh, um, I can't say that I've met anyone that was pro-fascist. You have to define that for me a little bit more, though,
Well, it
please.
would be the opposite of anti-fascist.
Okay.
Antifa stands for
Right.
anti-fascist,
Sure.
which Donald Trump says if you are against fascism,
Uh-huh.
essentially you are a member of a terrorist organization. If you stand
Mm.
against fascism in collection with other anti-fascists, then you're a terrorist. So therefore, one would ask the question, well, Mr. Trump,
Mhm.
who are the pro-fascists? And should we be equally or more so
Yeah.
terrified of them?
Yes. So let me refine my statement then. I have
Mm-hmm.
never met anyone personally that has affiliated themselves with Antifa, but I have met a lot of people that are in support of Trump. Now, at the same time, I know a lot of people who are against fascism, specifically coming from an anti-colonial uh, Pan-African lens.
That's
Um,
right.
and I'm sure I've come across people that are pro-fascist, um, that probably are not that open about their beliefs, but I have. It would surprise me if I hadn't met someone at some point in my life who uh, who was even probably of white supremacist ideology, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
So,
some of these alt right people. They're I can't put Charlie Kirk in that camp exactly, but there are some
mm-hmm.
very, very, very uh, articulate and well-spoken and debate style white people who use very eloquent words to say very, very, very racist things. And
Mm-hmm.
I have met some people like that.
Is a white nationalist by nature a pro-fascist?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think nationalism, forming people of like-minded, calling themselves a nation, to
Yeah.
me, that's natural. That's just natural. And you
People
don't
should love who
necessarily,
they are.
yeah, yeah, they should love who they are. And so therefore, I am a black nationalist, but
Okay.
according to Donald Trump's perspective, his purview, because you and I would stand up and say, I believe in forwarding and acting on behalf of the black nation, that would make us Antifa, according to his perspective. Correct me if you think I'm wrong.
I'm gonna disagree respectfully and go with the more specific definition of Antifa as a
Mm-hmm.
as an organized or a semi-organized organization, which
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
do not I do not put myself in that camp personally.
Okay. I'm looking in the chat. I see Oseo Kamal, and we're going to get your other comments in as well, King Jason. Oseo Kamal says he agrees, I think, with the perspective you just voiced. He said Antifa kind of joined in with Black Lives Matter in LA. From what I've seen, they were the college students that joined in the protests. And yeah, the, I don't know if there is an organized group with leadership structure, et cetera, calling itself Antifa. I personally think that's just Trump's limited mindset. And he is essentially calling young people who disagree with him,
Mm.
he's putting them all under the banner of Antifa, as opposed to Charlie Kirk, who to me was very close to, he was, of course, definitely was a white nationalist, but he
Yes.
was very close to being a fascist in the way that he was calling for white people to organize. And the one thing they did, which I disagree with, is they deliberately excluded everybody who wasn't one of them.
Mm.
And they,
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
you were in the trans community, while you and I may not relate at all with the trans community, they have a right to exist. and other forces, they do have a right to exist. Do they have a right to exist in your and my culture in our country? Well, to the best of our abilities, no,
Mhm.
because it undermines our culture, our self-sustaining culture and habits, etc.
Right.
And according to the ways of our elders, the elders of the African community were always charged with keeping the younger generation from identifying and accepting those values that undermined the entire culture and the entire society.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I got a little bit complicated in that explanation. I hope you could follow along. King Jason says, anything but them Epstein files. And when we look at what is going on with Donald Trump, with Antifa, and everything else, he's absolutely right. Anything but them Epstein files. And it seems that the MAGA people keep forgetting that the Epstein files is one of their highest priorities. They keep forgetting it. They'll bring it up, then they'll lose track of it, then they'll bring it up, then they'll lose track of it. Personally, I think Trump's propaganda team is doing a masterful dance around the demand to release the Epstein files.
Yes, and I think we know why that is, and I think it's far more vast than the average American could probably even conceive.
Mm-hmm. Why? What do you think is in those Epstein files? I think it's,
Personally,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, personally, I think I think there's a lot more people implicated in that from every academic sphere, from music to movies to art to literature. I think it would possibly topple the faith that American people barely still have for any type of leadership, maybe even in every industry. I mean, I think that, and I'm not trying to deify the demon named Jeffrey Epstein, but I think his reach was a lot further than even the mainstream media talks about. I mean, he bragged about experimentation on African children in Ethiopia and on the Virgin Islands.
Mm. And he apparently was a member of at least one, perhaps two, global spy organizations. One being the CIA and the other one being Mossad.
Mossad, right?
So, could the depth of the Epstein files also link into the fact that not only was there this huge spy operation being conducted by the Mossad,
Mm-hmm.
but that the rabbis themselves, they got some scandal going on regarding pedophilia. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever heard that, I should say?
I have heard that both in Brooklyn and in Israel. I have definitely heard of rampant uh, accusations of pedophilia amongst rabbis. It, it's comparable to the Catholic Church and their historical pedophilia.
Yeah. What was, and it's off the cuff question.
Sure.
What was the name of the circumcision rite or ritual in which the rabbi not only cuts the foreskin off,
Yeah.
but actually sucks the blood from
Oh,
the aborted? Do you know the name of that rite or ritual?
I the only thing that comes to mind, and it's from a joke that I can't tell on here, is a bris. Is that the right term? A bris?
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Sure. I'm
Where
trying to remember.
circumcision,
Yeah, go ahead.
the rabbi, come on, the computer don't even want to type it.
Moil. I think there's
Sex,
another term, moil, as well. is maybe the one that does the circumcision, the moil.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm gonna surgery. I'm just looking this up real quickly. Sorry about that,
No,
everybody.
no, it's
There's
all
a
good. We can keep it flowing.
circumcision. It's called Metzitza B'Peh.
Mm.
Here's what it says. I did this on Copilots. Don't blame me, everybody. This is Bill Gates' search engine. Metzitza B'Peh. Circumcision ritual where the rabbi sucks the blood from the surgery. The
Whoa.
ritual of circumcision, known as Brit Milah or Bris, is a significant religious ceremony in Judaism. It involves a surgical removal of the foreskin from the penis, which is followed by the metzitza b'peh, or oral suction of the blood from the wound. This practice is performed by a mohel, who is a trained, I almost said the nasty word, is trained professional in the Jewish community. The ritual is performed on the 8th day of the infant's life and is considered a sign of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. So well, that's their God, so I'm not going to ask what he was up to. The mohel's role in the ritual is to ensure the circumcision is performed correctly and safely according to Talmudic laws. The practice of metzitza b'peh is not only a religious ritual, but also a medical one, as it is believed to prevent the spread of infections. However, it has been a subject of controversy due to health concerns, leading to the development of alternative methods, such as using a glass tube to suck the blood from the womb. Despite these concerns, the ritual remains an integral part of Jewish life and culture. And
So they are
it
blood
says what
drinkers,
it says.
vampires.
They're not only vampires, but there's a word, I'm not going to say this word on LIBRadio, but it deals with roosters and it deals with roosters. I'm not Red
Sure,
Fox. I'm not going to go there.
No, I'm with you, man. We getting creative today.
Yeah, but I wonder. Oh, I'm not going to go there. I was about to start with my Red Fox jokes. What's the difference between? I'm not going to talk about it. But
Sneakers.
this is nasty. This is real nasty. Who in their right mind? Who
I
would
had
think
never
of
heard
something
that.
like this?
I had
I'm
never
go-
heard that before.
I'm going to copy, cut, and paste it. Actually, I have this up, and here I'm going to copy this. This
That's
article is entitled "NYC Orthodox Jews Clash Over Oral Circumcision Rite,"
well, they certainly got the
and
first one right.
it's
That's like vampiric pedophilia. That sounds like vampiric pedophilia.
it does, and it's crazy. But yeah, it is going on. I don't know how widespread it is, but if you talking about Orthodox Hebrewism, there are so many people who so deeply do believe in Orthodox Hebrewism that they will go through all of these rites and rituals because their rabbis will condone it.
Right. Just like
So I
Catholics
put up the
will-
link on the Rumble live chat. I'm sorry, continue.
No, I was going to say, much like Catholics would give their firstborn son to be apprenticed as a mentor to the to the head priest. That was an
And what
ancient,
was the head
practice.
priest doing?
Well, it involved
The head priest was,
it involved one of those things.
well, the head priest. Are you talking about the head priest was given some priest?
Yeah, exactly. That part.
We're getting a little wild, and I'm going to begin to wrap up the program here very shortly. There were a couple of other stories that I did have queued up that I wanted to see if we can get under the table.
Sure.
The government shut down, nearly 3 weeks long now, expected to break a new record. It began on October 1st. The impasse centers on point one. extension and duration of health insurance subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, otherwise known as what the insurance companies want. Point two, a reversal of Medicaid cuts. Point three, control and limits on presidential spending authority empowerment. And point four, the overall budget disagreement on government size and federal spending priorities. You talked about they did pass a $1 billion defense authorization budget for the coming year. And that's a trillion dollar, not a billion, a $1 trillion. And that to me just adds another $1 trillion to the already $39 trillion U.S. federal debt.
Mm.
There's no money to pay for that.
No.
So what do? You devalue the dollar, and you devalue everything. You devalue everything, including putting a lot of people out of work so that they can have this big arms weapons supply. You were saying?
Exactly, yes. And the nearly $1 trillion defense bill on top of that.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Absolutely. And the last story that I have up, the African Union suspended Madagascar following a military coup took place on October 17, led by Colonel Michael Randrianarina, who was swiftly sworn in as the new president on October 17. Randrianirina's rise came after 3 weeks of youth-led protests against the government, culminating in the ousting and flight of President André Rajoelina. The United Nations condemned the military takeover, as well as the African Union suspended Madagascar. Another orange revolution.
Yeah, sounds like it. And I think it might have been last year we were cataloging all the attempted coups throughout the continent, and there were significant ones, including in the very, very small island nation of Saint Tomé and Principe, or Principal. So yeah, we have to pay attention to that. Goes back to that CIA question, number one, and number two, Madagascar having led that very brave, bold, courageous move to create COVID organics as a natural, plant-based, indigenous medicinal remedy to COVID-19, quote unquote, and its manufacture and development, and its offering to, I believe it was 17 nations on the continent of Africa. And so I would love to know where this new leader stands in that equation, because that's going to be telling as well. Just like we lost, ancestor John Pombe Magufuli, who was replaced by a president. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but who was very, very pro Western medical intervention during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to keep that in mind.
We will have to keep that in mind, undeniably. And there's a lot for us to look at this upcoming week, all across LIBRadio. A couple of these stories I'm going to go into more depth on my daily broadcast. And thank you for tuning in and encouraging other people to do what you are doing. Tune in as well. There's a lot that they can learn.
Actually.
And so we're going to move forward. Did we get everything that was on your plate as well?
Yeah, I had wanted to just quickly talk about Columbus Day and how that whole thing. I wanted to just mention two books. One was John Henry Clark's Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, Slavery and the Rise of European Capitalism. That book, very, very profound to get the true story of what a demonic, sinister, evil being Christopher Columbus was. And also another book called The African Presence in the Americas, Fulcrums of Change, The Origins of Racism in the Americas, and other essays. And that's by ancestor Jan Carew, who was very close with Malcolm. And
Jan Carew, a very significant character as well. Very glad you remember him. I'm glad you mentioned his name. I had forgotten about Jan Carew. So many of our great ones have moved on, and we should not forget their names, no doubt.
Ashe.
And
So Bob,
another one who I want to mention right now, since I'm thinking about these ancestors that moved on, Ilambe
Ashe.
Brath. Do you remember Ilambe Brath?
No, no, let me write that down. I didn't know Ilambe. How do I spell that?
Elombebrath. Ilambe Brath. He was from New York,
Okay.
and he was just one of those profound brothers who was in the spirit and the footprints of Kwame
Ashe.
Ture,
Ashe.
always on the pathway of Pan Africanism and doing the best he could to keep all of us informed, well informed, on the cutting edge of what was happening over there. Just a really, really good brother who we should all have all of these names in mind.
I'll say no. I'll definitely look up that brother, see if I can't find any speeches or videos. But yeah, Trump called Columbus the real and true American hero, and both of those books, Fulcrums of Change by Jan Carew and Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust by ancestor John Henry Clark, both of them specifically state the opposite. They say he is thought of as being the West, the greatest hero of the West, but in reality, he is the greatest villain to African and indigenous people.
And yeah, that is true. The greatest villain in humanity, because this Holocaust that followed Christopher Columbus's footprints, of which he began the actual Holocaust of killing everything in sight.
Yes.
This devastation, this Holocaust has turned the whole planet, And so from the Western Hemisphere, which before Christopher Columbus we knew very little about, it did have its own horror stories, but those horror stories were limited. But the wholesale genocide that followed Christopher Columbus's not only passage, but then returning to exploit and steal all of the gold that they could possibly get was absolutely horrible. And so to celebrate, commemorate Christopher Columbus is to basically celebrate the worst of the worst. To be celebrating is like as if Hebrew people or Jewish people were asked to commemorate, celebrate Hitler's birthday. It doesn't make any sense at all that African people would and indigenous people would participate in that. There has been an attempt in the U.S. to rebrand Christopher Columbus Day as Native Indigenous Peoples Day.
Right.
Unfortunately, after 2 or 3 years, that effort seems to have faded into oblivion, especially in the era of Donald Trump.
So true. And if I could just maybe close with a short passage from a gifted Bayesian poet and novelist by the name of George Lamming. This is within the book Fulcrums of Change. He says, the indigenous Carib and Arawak Indians, living by their own lights long before the European adventure, gradually disappear in the blind wild forest of blood. That mischievous gift, the sugar cane, is introduced, and a fantastic human migration moves to the new world of the Caribbean. Deported crooks and criminals, defected soldiers and royalist gentlemen fleeing from Europe, slaves from the coast of West Africa, East Indians, Chinese Eurasians, and the Portuguese. The list is always incomplete, but they all move and meet on an unfamiliar soil in a violent rhythm of race and religion.
Wow. And who wrote that again?
That was by Bayesian poet and novelist George Lamming, Lamming, and that is from the book Fulcrums of Change by Jan Carew.
Wow. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Ashe, we give honor and praise to all of those great ones who came before us, who gave us this pathway to follow and the legacy that they gave us. We vow to continue on for generations to come. And on that note, I think we did cover everything for today. I want to thank you very much, Dwara, for filling in and doubling up your width and your breadth here and filling in for Baba Junius as well. Next week, I think we're all three going to be back together again. And on that note, thank you for tuning in. to your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. Tell your friends, everybody. Tell your friends to tell their friends about what we got. Share today's link if you have access to it. Share it on your social media page or however you do communicate with your friends and your family. We are LIB Radio. We are livinginblack.com. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you.